Hello and welcome to this next segment reading of the Asatru Edda. I am as Geirröðr, and in this chapter we are going to be talking about a infamously known giant by the name of Geirröðr, who is the son of Hrothungr. A Jotun named Hrothungr had two sons, one named Agnar and the other Geirröðr. Agnar was 10 and Geirröðr 8 winters old. They both rowed out in a boat with their hooks and lines to catch small fish, but the wind drove them out to sea. In the darkness of night they were wrecked on the shore and went up into the country, where they found a cottager with whom they stayed through the winter. The cottager's wife brought up Agnar and the cottager Geirröðr, and gave him good advice. In the spring the man got them a ship, and when he and his wife accompanied them to the strand, the man talked apart with Geirröðr. They had a fair wind and would reach their father's place. Geirröðr was at the ship's prow. He sprang on shore, but pushed the ship out, saying, "Go where an evil spirit may have you." The vessel was driven out to sea, but Geirröðr went up into the town, where he was well received, but his father was dead. Geirröðr was then taken for king and became famous among the Jotun. Once it had befallen Loki, having gone flying for fun with Frigga's falcon guise, that out of curiosity he had flown in Geirröðr's garter and saw a great hall there, and he alighted and looked in through the window. But Geirröðr looked out at him and ordered that the bird should be caught and brought to him. The person sent got with difficulty up on the wall of the hall, it was so high. Loki was pleased that it caused him trouble, and planned to delay flying up until the man had performed the whole thing of the difficult climb. But when the fellow came at him, he beat his wings and jumped hard afterwards, and found his feet were stuck. Loki was captured there and brought to the Jotun Geirröðr. And when he saw his eyes, he had a feeling it must be a person, and demanded that he answer him, but Loki remained silent. Then Geirröðr locked Loki in a chest and starved him there for 3 months. And when Geirröðr took him out and demanded that he speak, Loki said who he was, and to redeem his life he swore Geirröðr oaths that he would get Thor to come to Geirröðr's garter so they could ambush him. The father of the sea thread, Midgard Solmer, set about urging the fellow Thor of the life net of the garter of the flight ledges to leave home. Lopter Loki was a mighty liar and deceitful mind-teaser of the war thunder's garter Thors, and declared that green paths led towards Geirröðr's war horse or house. The brave Thor did not need to be asked often by the vulture path of Loki to make their journey. They were eager to oppress the Thorn Ymir's descendants Jotnar, where the tamer of Garvik's Geirröðr, mightier than Soktar of Yggthi Slagfinnr's dwelling, again set forth by breeders towards Imsi's kindred. Rognir of the battle was quicker to join the swift moves of the armies on the expedition than the arm burden of the Dis of the Cedar. I recite Grimnir's lip streams. The maiden betrayer of the halls of the shrill crier stretched the palms of the soles onto Endil's Ego's moor. And the battle Vanir walked until the prime diminisher of maidens of the enemy of the Frieder of the Heaven Shield reached Ganger's blood, when the agile, quick-tempered averter of Loki's mischief wished to oppress the bride of the sledge-buck's kinsman. An honored decreaser of the Nana of the pommel of the sea crossed on foot the icy swollen streams which tumble around the Lynx's ocean. The furious Thor of the Jotun made fast progress and broad way to the stick path where mighty streams spewed poison. There they pushed shooting serpents into the net forest against the loud wind of the forest. The slippery round bones did not sleep. The banging files jangled against the pedals, while the mountains falling roar rushed, beaten by an ice storm along Freyja's anvil. Vimir is the name of the river that Thor waded when he was on his way to Geirröðr's garter, which he called Eilivagar. And then Thor got to the middle of the river. It rose so much that it washed up over his shoulders. Then Thor spoke this: "Do not rise now, Vimir, since I desire to wade you into the Jotun's courts. Know that if you rise, then the divine strength in me will rise up as high as heaven. The promoter of the whetstone land let the mighty swollen ones fall over him. The man who benefited from the belt of might knew no better course of action. The diminisher of Mimir's of Morn's children threatened his power should grow into the hall's roof, unleash the gushing blood of Thorn Ymir's neck would diminish. The glorious battle-wise warriors, oath-sworn Vikingar of Got Odin's dwelling, waded hard while the sworn fen flowed. The wave of the earth's snow dune, blown by the tempest, rushed forcefully at the increaser of the rune dwellers of the land of Ridge and Thorfi, accompanied the friend of man, flew into the air of his own accord into the Sky Lord's shield strap. That was a great feat of strength. The widows of the Mimir of mischief caused a violent stream, strident with steel. Geirröðr's toppler carried the battle tree across the bumpy land of the purpose. The deep acorns of hostilities of the men who firmly opposed disgrace did not miss a beat at the surge of the current of Glami's haunt. The brave son of the Isthmus was not threatened by the terror of the ford trees. Thor's valor stone did not tremble from fear, and neither did Thjalfi's. When Thor saw up in a current cleft that Geirröðr's daughter Glap was standing astride the river, and she was causing it to rise by urinating in it. Then he took a great stone up out of the river and threw it at her and said, "At its outlet must a river be stemmed." He did not miss what he was aiming at, and at that moment he found himself close to the bank, with the warriors on his belt and Thjalfi on his shoulders, and managed to grasp a sort of rowan branch called Geirröðr, and thus climbed out of the river. Hence comes the saying that Thor's salvation is a rowan. A flock of cliff foes of the shield of the ever-burning fire made a din in the sword horde against the Titaners of Gleipnir. Before the crossers of the deep, the destroyers of the nation of the seashore, were able to conduct the bowl play of their hair parting of Hathen, the scary nation of the cold wave of the foe Svithjod fled and hurried into their sanctuary, accompanied by the crusher of the Ness people. The Danir of the flood rib of the outlying sanctuary admitted defeat, when the kinsmen of the Yolnir Odin's fire-shaker stood resolutely. When Thor got to Geirröðr's, he and his company were first of all shown into a goat shed as their lodging. When the warriors endowed with minds of valor entered the house of Thorn, there was a great din among the Kumrar of the cave of the circular wall. Inside there was a single seat to sit on, and it was Thor who sat on it. Then he realized that the seat was lifting under him up towards the roof. The peace-reluctant slayer of the reindeer of the Listar of the Peak was put in a fix there, on the dire, grim hat of the brow moon against the rafters of the rock hall. Thor pushed Geirröðr up into the rafters and pressed himself down hard into the seat. Then there was a great crack accompanied by a great stream. Under the seat it was Geirröðr's daughter Glap and Grip, and they were crushed against the rocks of the plain on the rock hall. The hall controller of the hovering chariot of the thunderstorm broke the ancient keel of the laughter ship, and both cave maidens. Then Geirröðr had Thor called into the hall for games. There were great fires there along the lengths of the hall. Jordfriga's son taught an unusual lesson, but the men of the lair of the land of the fjord apple did not cease their ale feast. And when Thor came into the hall opposite Geirröðr, Geirröðr, the frightener of the elm cord, Suthri's kinsman, picked up with the tongs a glowing lump of molten iron, cooking in the forge, and threw it into the mouth of Odin's grief-thief Thor. The oppressor Thor of the kinfolk of the evening running women opened wide the mouth of his arm at the heavy red morsel of the tongs, seaweed. With his iron gauntlets Thor had swift hastier of battle. Throng Freyja's old friend greedily drank, and raised drink of the molten lump into the air with the swift mouths of his hands. Then the hissing cinder took flight from the hostile beast of his grip, of the ardent lover of Hrimnir's maiden, towards the one who strongly missed Thrúðr. Thor raised the molten lump into the air, while Geirröðr ran into the shelter of an iron pillar for protection. Thor flung the molten lump, and it crashed into the pillar, and through Geirröðr, and through the wall, and so into a ground outside. The hall of Freyr Geirröðr shook, when Heidrikr Geirröðr's broad head was brought underneath the ancient leg of the wall of the forebear. The splendid stepfather of Ullr struck the harmful brooch with great force down through the middle of the girdle of the villain, of the tooth of the way of the fishing line. The furious one Thor slaughtered the descenders of Glaumar with his bloody hammer. The slayer Thor of the frequent visitor of the hall of the stone disk, Jotun, was victorious. Lack of Thalfi's support did not hamper the pull of the bow, god of the chariot who inflicted grief upon the Jotun's benchmates. The worshipped Hellstriker with the Alpha slew the wood calves of the subterranean refuge from Alfheimer's gleam with the easy crusher Mjolnir. The Rhaegar of the Lister of the Falcon Lair were unable to harm the firmly supported shortener of the lifespan of the men of the Rock King. Well, you have clearly a part of Thrividi's 9 heads held back your steed with the notorious Jotun feast drinker. Thor, you broke Lincoln's bones. You pounded Thrivaldi, you cast down Starkothr, you stood over the dead Grop. There was a clang on Keeler's crown. You broke Kjalandi completely. Before you slew Luther and Nidi, you made Busara bleed. You halted Hengjakjapte. Herokingolvig died previously. Yet was the dusky Svíðr's life taken earlier. Thank you for joining us for this very interesting and very poetically written and slightly confusing chapter of the Asatru Edda on another of Thor's adventures against the Jotun giants. Please support the channel by hitting that thumbs up and subscribe to see all of our new content. Thank you again for listening in. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you on the next episode.